of updates. I'll touch on some roster decisions and give you a medical update, and then we can take questions as we go. First, we want to share with you the news. We met with Rougned Odor, met with Rugi a little earlier, and informed him that we've made the difficult decision that when we submit our open day roster here this week, that he's not going to be part of it. First off, let me say that all these decisions are challenging, whether somebody's been with you for 10 years or 6 weeks in spring training, that we take all these things very seriously. But in particular with somebody like Rugi, who's been with the organization for since he was 16 years old. We know him, the family, extremely well. Big part of the club, big part of our community, and he has been. It was a weird spring, obviously, where media, you guys weren't around every day, and obviously our fans didn't have the insight into it as maybe you normally would. But Rugi was outstanding in terms of willingness to move to third base, his openness to coaching and feedback. I think really what it came down to was, we've made a decision, obviously, with a pretty clear direction looking towards the future. And, playing him every day was not in our plans this year. And then, as we look forward, we think we're going to have some younger players coming up. And we didn't think it was in his best interest or our best interest to kind of force the issue into a bench role. So we made the decision to make the move now. But ton of respect for Rugi as a man, first and foremost, as a person, as a teammate. He was, it was never an issue there. There were, want to make that very clear. Like that didn't play into it. This is a baseball decision, and just as we form our roster this year and over the next couple. Obviously when you make these decisions, you take a ton of factors into it. This was primarily about the fit on the club and looking forward. Very challenging piece of it with the contract. That decision ultimately was made a number of years ago. When I recommended that to ownership, when I signed them to the deal, and I think ownership had the perspective that that was done at the time it was done, and this is about looking forward. So certainly appreciate their support. It's not fun to make that kind of recommendation to be willing to eat that kind of money, especially coming off a year where the economics were what they were. But do appreciate their support and kind of shared vision as we look forward on this thing. I think the only other piece I'd mention there is, I'm certainly hopeful. We're all hopeful that Rugi gets an opportunity to catch on elsewhere this year, and could very well be an opportunity, better opportunity for him with another club than we would have had. We'll have some time here to potentially trade him. We have talked with clubs over the course of the winter and even the spring. Given the nature of things, rosters, finances, etc., I'm not necessarily expecting that we find a fit, but you never know. There may be something there, so we'll explore that first before we move forward. So that's the news there with Rugi. We'll give you a little medical update, and then we can take some questions.
Thanks, JD. Hello, everybody. Hope everyone is well. On the injury front, just a few updates here. Joely Rodriguez threw a live BP today. He continues to progress well, and kind of the timeline 2 weeks into the season is the targeted date. So he's continuing to progress. Jonathan Hernandez will have a MRI, 4-week follow-up MRI next week. We'll evaluate that and see where he is and determine the next steps for him and his rehab. Josh Young's recovering from foot surgery, as everyone knows. He is back in Arizona with our rehab staff. Everything went smoothly, and Josh will now start the early phases of his rehab program. Willie Calhoun had 9 at-bats yesterday in a simulated game. All went well, and the next steps for Willie are in the next few days to hopefully play DH in a game in Arizona. Chris Davis is doing very light activity right now. No baseball activity, just very light rehab right now for his quadriceps. Sam Huff is progressing well, is in the latter phases of his rehab. We will likely do one more MRI just to ensure his healing is where we want it, but all things are pointed upwards with Sam. Brett Martin, of course, you guys have seen him pitch. He continues to do well, is throwing the ball well, is about a week behind schedule, but all in all, a week behind in terms of opening day, but all in all, Brett has progressed great. And then DeMarcus is doing great as well. He is throwing bullpens right now and will also start getting into minor league games once camp opens there. And then lastly, with Jose Leclerc, he will be undergoing Tommy John surgery tomorrow. He decided this is the best course of action for him. We certainly support that decision and are disappointed to lose Jose. We hate that he's going through this injury. It's a big loss for our club, but nonetheless, we look forward to getting Jose healthy and then hopefully back some point next year. And that's it on the medical front. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, we've got questions for JD and Chris. Please raise your hand. We'll start with Evan.
Guys, thanks for those updates. I just want to double check with you here in regards to Odor. It seems like this team is moving forward. You're talking about setting standards and establishing a bar for this year. And how much does just moving forward figure into this decision?
I think Evan kind of laid it out, at the outset. I mean, we did not envision an everyday role on the club for Rougned this year, and that was kind of the context that we made the call. There are some players in our system that, if we have injuries, and we will, that we would like to see get opportunities to find out about it. This is a year about answering some questions to help us kind of go into from a planning standpoint for 22 and beyond. Obviously, we want to compete. We want to get the most out of this group, but we are understanding of where we're at, and with that comes giving opportunities to other players. Some of that is now, but some of that is over the course of the year and into 22. So, I'm not sure if that is exactly what you're getting at, but I think that did play a pretty substantial role in this decision. That the way he played third base, we had very little doubt that he could contribute in that role. But it was more about, kind of, as you said, the beyond this year and the opportunity for other people as we move forward.
In regards to so I'm assuming what you're saying is that, are you guys announcing that he's VFA, or just for the time being, you just informed him he wouldn't make the roster?
The latter, yeah. We won't have to make a move. He won't be designated until opening day when we submit the roster.
And I just want to be clear that, there's not a trip to the minor leagues for him. Based on the service time and the contract, this is the end with the Rangers.
Yeah, we did not ask him to consent to go to the minor leagues.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions, please raise your hand. Jeff, please use the thing if you can. Jeff, go ahead.
So how now do you fill third base? You have Brock Holt, who's been told he's going to make the team. Is this an indication that Charlie Colton is also going to make the team and no platoon?
The first part of your question, yes, yeah. Woody informed Charlie a little while ago that he'll be on the club. As far as platoon or how Woody deploys them, I think that'll, we'll see. I think Brock will get a good share of time over there. And then we have other guys, whether it's, over the course of the year, Anderson Tejeda or Andy Ibanez or Yanni Hernandez, Sherton Apostle, Davis Wenzel, Josh Young. I think there are other guys that could ultimately factor in depending upon how they're playing and what the opportunities are. But Brock and Charlie will likely get the bulk of the reps there as we open up.
It was a spring training where people had to earn their at bats, earn their spot on the team, and Odor peers have done that defensively, but it didn't look like there was much improvement or change with him at the plate. I know it's spring training, but nevertheless, the at-bats all still look the same. Is that accurate?
I actually don't feel that way. I mean, listen, first of all, I don't think spring training performance means much in terms of, like, when I say that, I mean, like, straight up, like, stats. When you look over like, there's almost no correlation between, like, March game performance and, historically and how guys do during the season. In fact, over the last few years, Rugi's been one of the best players in spring training, and that hasn't continued over the course of the year. A couple of changes that he did make, I think, from his mechanically, his approach or his stance at the plate, he's much more relaxed and in a much better position to hit. The hitting coaches were really pleased with that. He was working on toning down his leg kick some as well to give him more time to make decisions. And I think that did play out a little bit. You see his walk strikeout was was much better than it had been in the past. So he was making some effort to make real changes, and it wasn't, I think you phrased it as kind of like the same as the past. I do think he made some notable changes there, both in approach and mechanics.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Levi.
So, I mean, it's a baseball decision, and to hear you, and understandably, I give Odor credit for the changes that he did make. But I'm curious about the flip side of that. So, if you're asking a guy to make changes, and he does make those changes, but still is not on the roster, can you give me a little bit more insight onto kind of what factors meant that he didn't make the team? I'm not sure if I'm phrasing that clearly.
Yeah, I mean, I think two things. One is our desire to see other players get mixed in, whether it's now or over the course of the year. And so we did not have a regular spot for him to play, and we're not. We didn't feel that the bench role was in his best interest or necessarily our best interests. And I think the other one is projecting out performance. And while he was making every efforts there, ultimately we had to make a call whether we felt that would turn into production at the plate. And while I'm hopeful that it will in time, and hopefully he gets another opportunity, and it will. We weren't prepared to play it out.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Emily.
Hey guys, this is for both of you. So when obviously so many, pieces are now gone, and the desire to rebuild is obviously there. How do you try to put those pillars back in place, those foundation pieces, or is that something that's just going to happen organically, to where you look at, like, okay, a Joey, how important is it to make him be a pillar, or Isaiah, or whoever it is? Do you identify those and try to hone that, or do you just see what happens and how this plays out this season?
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Emily, it's a great question. I mean, I think that it happens organically, in my opinion. I think that I don't want to speak for JD here, but I think that this is something that kind of takes care of itself with the performance of the players. I think that one of the great things about our club this year is there's a lot of opportunity, and we're looking forward to finding out about a lot of the young guys who are going to establish themselves and hopefully be part of our future for years to come. Who those guys are and who steps up and rises to the occasion, is still to be determined. But we can't just label certain players and say this player is a pillar of our organization. It has to be earned, and it has to be earned not only in terms of performance but amongst their teammates as well. And so there's an adjustment period that takes place. We recognize, but we are excited about the group we have, and so we're looking forward to some of these guys really establishing themselves in that role.
Yeah, I'd echo that, and I think it's interesting, Emily, that the two names you mentioned, are two guys, both by the way that they play the game, production-wise for sure, but also like their kind of style of play, and their quotes this spring have stood out. And obviously Joey, what he's capable of physically, but you watch the way he's attacking balls in the outfield, and he hasn't had a chance to throw many guys out because they absolutely they're shutting down the running game when he's out there. I mean, he's flying down the line every chance he gets. You know, the second baseman, the shift, bobbles the ball for a split second. He's on first base. So I think, in addition to things that people say and kind of the leadership mantle that maybe you read in quotes, like that's how these guys are setting the tone for this club, and I hope that continues. And to your point, these guys, it becomes very clear who they are.
And also, too, I talked to Woody about this a week or so ago, and obviously we know my relationship with Ruby and Elvis, they're like my children, but with their departure, it also doesn't it free some of these other guys up to do things that they might not have done otherwise with those two in the room?
That's possible, yeah. I mean, I think our natural inclination, as you know, there's an order of things, right? We all kind of defer a little bit to maybe those that have been there a little longer, whether it's in a media gathering or in a clubhouse, and that wasn't the express reason why we did this, but I agree with you. I think that may be something that comes of it as as guys. There's a little more of an opening for people to speak up when there isn't kind of that set order from the way things were done in the past.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Back to Evan.
So, Katie, I guess, I mean, you've been handling most of these, and it doesn't sound like, save for injuries to somebody, that there was anything that Rugi could have done this spring that would have forced his way onto the club. Is that a fair or unfair assessment?
That's unfair, I think, because it was like we played this out for a variety of reasons, but one of which is that this was not a cut and dry decision for us. I think if you had a situation, if somebody was an issue in the clubhouse, that would be Rugi was outstanding. Even when he was struggling, like this guy was working hard, competing. He was there for his teammates, and the last couple of years haven't been easy on him, and I give him a lot of credit for how he kind of handled that and kept going and didn't back off and didn't kind of run from it. I think if part of the decision was about Rugi, part of the decision was about others around him in the organization and kind of how we wanted to play it out. So it was the things that Rugi were in his control from a work standpoint, a commitment standpoint, him being open to feedback. He did what he could have done there. There were some things out of his control that played in as well.
The other thing is, you hear this conversation all the time about once you commit to the contract, it becomes a sunk cost. I mean, that's the way people talk about it. But this organization hasn't made a history of moving on from people with multiple year commitments well. Is there? I don't want to say is there anything to be read into it, but that does still seem a significant decision.
Oh, I mean, I could rattle off some, contracts that were moved, prior from a number of them. So I don't think that that's necessarily the case with your statement, but. And
I'm not saying move per se. I'm just talking about like being ready to release if you don't. Got it.
No, it's a major decision. One thing I want to stress here, like I think in sports in general, we have a tendency of connecting the contract with the person, right? And we talk when somebody has a high dollar contract or a multi-year contract, and the performance is not in line with that. There's like the player almost gets like some fan lashback because of it, and and I'm like really cognizant of that. I mean, I'm the one that offered him the contract. I'm the one that recommended ownership and signed him. He's done his best to live up to it. Now at the end of the day, like the production wasn't what we needed, and we made the decision that we made. But I'm very cognizant of that. I like that, that a lot of times these contracts become almost unwieldy in the sense of what it, the pressure that it places on the player and the way that other people react to them. And I just want to like really make that clear that the contract is one thing. Obviously our actions speak to that. The person, the player is another. And I hope our fans like recognize Rougned was a part of some really fun moments in the history of our franchise. Brought an edge to the club. Always played hard, was durable, wanted to be out there, moved his family to the community, loves it here, and I hope they embrace that part of it.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go back to Jeff.
I know he's injured, I get it, but has Chris Davis officially made the team?
I don't think we had that opportunity to make that call. I think he was in a really good position, was probably trending that way. But, unfortunately, that quad injury with a week or so to go, knocked that out. We hope so. We hope he plays well and rehabs well, and we're in position to give him at bats when he gets back. But, honestly, we're going to have to see where everything's at that point.
I mean, it would seem that he fits kind of into the same ballpark as Rougned here, in that he might be taking a spot of player where you would want to evaluate other players.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that's we're not necessarily saying that about every veteran player. Towards the end of their contract, that we see real value in having productive veteran players, quality veteran players around our young group as we reestablish a winning culture. So, we're not looking to, do this with everybody.
Okay. And then on Leclerc, 12 to 15 month timeline, so middle of next season maybe?
Yeah, Jeff, I think that I want to be careful not to place timelines on guys. Everybody rehabs differently, but I think that that's probably the window for this surgery. It could be longer, probably not any shorter. But yeah, I think that's the expectation at this point.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, we'll take a couple more. Back to Levi.
As best I can figure, there's one roster spot open. I don't know if this is something your decision has been made or not, but do we have an announcement on the last roster spot?
I think, Levi, we're still working through a couple things on the last spot. I think there's the possibility that we may start the season with 14 pitchers. We're still working through trying to figure out what fits best as we go into the weekend with Kansas City, and then also getting through the first homestand as well. Certainly with Brett Martin coming back, Joely coming back shortly thereafter. A couple balls in the air at this point, but we're working to finalize soon.